The forest feels familiar. You know every trail, every turn, and then, in a single step, everything around you becomes different.
People all over the world tell similar stories. They enter places they know well to pick mushrooms or berries or just to take a walk, and suddenly find themselves somewhere completely different.
Today, we will share several real testimonies. Stories that are difficult to explain through logic alone. Stories of people who may have briefly stepped beyond the boundary of our reality. Not far from my home, there is a cave with ancient rock carvings. Speleologists often come there to study it. Once, a female speleologist came to work in this cave. She knew it extremely well, like the back of her hand. She had been there many times before, but this time, everything went wrong. She went down into the cave and worked there as usual, but when she started heading back out, the exit was gone. Instead of the familiar passage, there was only a solid cave wall. She wandered through the cave for a long time, trying to find a way out, but there was no exit. Eventually, her flashlight ran out of power, and the cave was plunged into complete darkness. She didn't know which way to go. Then, far in the distance, she noticed a beam of light. She started moving toward it, stumbling over rocks. Finally, she came out of the cave, but the exit was not the one she knew. Near the mountain stood several small houses. She knew for certain that there had never been any settlement there. Still, she approached one of the houses and knocked on the door. A woman came out. She was dressed in old-fashioned clothing, the kind no one wears anymore. Without saying a word, the woman invited her inside. She placed a wooden bowl of pumpkin porridge in front of her. After eating, the speleologist lay down and fell asleep. When she woke up, the houses were gone. She was lying on the grass. Then she saw the mountain and the entrance to the cave. When she returned to the settlement, it turned out she had been missing for a week and a half, and search efforts had already been underway for some time. Later, she searched through local archives and discovered that a settlement had indeed existed near that mountain, about 200 years ago. I encountered an anomalous phenomenon in the Siberian taiga, in Russia's Krasnoyarsk region, near the village of Kursantivo. My husband and I came there with our children to visit his parents. We spent time together, talked a lot, and enjoyed the beauty and silence of those wonderful places. One day, my husband, his brother and wife, and I decided to cross the river to pick berries. We also took along a beautiful Siberian Laika. We got into a small motorboat, crossed to the other side, and in a good mood entered the taiga. We were walking and chatting, everyone close together. The dog was running around nearby. The cedar trees rustled, birds were singing, the river could be heard, and the sound of motorboats traveling along it carried through the air. Life felt calm and perfect. We came out into a small clearing. The scene looked completely normal. My brother-in-law, his wife, and the Laika were standing at the edge of the clearing, smiling. We were joking. My husband and I stepped into the middle of the clearing. He was about half a meter away from me. I noticed blueberries at my feet. I bent down, picked one, then raised my eyes, and my husband was gone. My brother-in-law and his wife were gone, and there was silence all around. A vacuum. I couldn't hear a single sound of nature. I looked up. There was no movement in the trees. Everything had stopped. My mind was completely clear. I stood there, thoughts flashing through my head. What just happened? This can't be real. Suddenly, I broke into motion and started running around the clearing, but I couldn't cross its boundaries. A cold chill appeared somewhere deep inside me, and then I screamed. Only the taiga heard my cry. Immediately, all the sounds returned. The world started moving again, very, very far away. I heard my husband and my brother-in-law calling my name, and the dog barking. A short time later, the dog ran up to me, and then everyone else arrived. That was when I broke down. I started hysterically crying, tears streaming down my face from everything I had just experienced. Once, when I was a child, I found myself in what felt like a different time, or maybe a different dimension. I still remember it as one of the brightest and most magical experiences of my life. I was about 7 or 8 years old. I was spending my summer vacation with my grandparents in the countryside. One hot day, they went to collect hay for their animals. They put me on the wagon and even let me hold the reins during the ride. We arrived at a field. The grass there had already been cut and lay neatly in long rows. A forest could be seen far in the distance. Nearby, there was only a small ravine overgrown with bushes. The heat was unbearable. Not a single cloud in the sky, only grasshoppers chirping. They gave me a small bundle of food and a bottle of water that had grown warm in the sun, and told me not to wander too far. My grandparents were gathering the dried hay and throwing it onto the wagon. I got bored. Without thinking much, I headed toward the bushes and the ravine. I started going down the steep slope into the ravine, grabbing onto tall grass. I slipped, rolled down, and ended up sliding the rest of the way on my bottom. I stood up and didn't understand anything. I was surrounded by a forest, giant trees, round pebbles under my feet, and ahead of me I could hear the loud murmur of a stream, or maybe a small river. I took a few steps, and butterflies started rising everywhere around me. Large ones, bright blue. I had never seen anything like them before. They would lift off from under my feet and then settle nearby again, slowly flapping their wings. At first, I just stood there, staring with my mouth open. Then I started running around, laughing, chasing the butterflies. I took off my sandals, leather ones, and stepped barefoot into the water. It was icy cold. What a place! What beauty! I wanted to catch at least one butterfly to show my grandparents. Honestly, I don't remember how I got out of there. I vaguely recall hearing my grandparents calling me from far away, their voices anxious. I shouted back, "I'm here, I'm coming." I ran toward their voices, and suddenly found myself on an ordinary grassy slope of the ravine. It turned out they had been looking for me for a long time. All the hay had already been collected, the wagon piled high, and I was nowhere to be found. They had gone down into the ravine. I wasn't there. When I ran up to them, they scolded me. They thought I had been hiding. They were angry, exhausted from the heat and hard work. They had lost me and searched for a long time. And there I was, appearing out of nowhere, telling them about the stream, the forest, and the huge butterflies. What stream? What forest? There's no stream here. The forest is way over there on the horizon. What are you making up? By the way, I ran back to them barefoot. My sandals were never found, so they sat me on top of the hay wagon without shoes and wrote my story off as childish imagination and nonsense, but I never forgot that place. I kept asking my grandparents to take me there again. Of course, they brushed it off. Later, when I was older, I returned to the village, took my grandfather's bicycle, and rode all around the area searching for that wonderful place. I never found it. Last week, I went into the forest near my house. I could clearly see the roof of my home from where I was. I know this forest well, and there are fire break ditches all around. I didn't cross a single one. I just decided to quickly pick some mushrooms close to home. The day was overcast, with no sun, and a light drizzle was falling. I had picked about half a basket of porcini and Polish mushrooms, regularly glancing toward the roof of my house, visible through the pines and spruces. Suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, I saw an enormous black snake, about 1.5 meters long. That's completely unrealistic for our area. It was black, writhing and crawling. I jumped aside, and it vanished. A wave of icy cold washed over me. I told myself it must have been my imagination and decided to head home. But when I looked around, I was surrounded by swampy ground, hummocks, twisted aspens growing on them, poisonous mushrooms in the moss. I was in shock. There are no swamps anywhere near my house. I couldn't see my roof anymore. Instead, a wall of dark forest stood in every direction. I turned around several times. It was the same everywhere. There was no way I could have gotten lost. I hadn't gone anywhere. I hadn't crossed a single ditch, and the entire forest is cut through with them. I walked back toward where it seemed lighter for a couple of hours. I walked and prayed. Then I suddenly saw a familiar pine tree, uprooted and lying across one of the firebreak ditches. I walked toward it, stepped over the ditch, and came out onto the road. I got home with my legs trembling. As I was approaching the house, my neighbor came running toward me. She said that a couple of hours earlier, she had seen me walking toward my house. She decided to come meet me, but while she was opening the gate, I vanished. But she saw me clearly. At that very time, I was wandering in the forest. Now, I'm afraid to go there. What was that? Cases in which people in forests feel as if they have entered another dimension have been reported in many parts of the world, from the Siberian taiga to mountain trails in America. These stories, though separated by distance and culture, show a striking similarity in key features. Sudden silence, the loss of familiar landmarks, distorted perception of time, a sense of something otherworldly nearby, and a subsequent return, often with the person confused and frightened. The consistency of these signs raises questions about what kind of phenomenon lies behind them.
There is no single accepted explanation for such cases. Some attribute them to imagination, stress, or natural disorientation. But there are also alternative hypotheses, from legendary forest spirits that seem to come back to life in modern accounts, to science fiction, like ideas about portals and multidimensional spaces.
There is also a popular theory linking these phenomena to Bigfoot. Similar effects described during alleged Bigfoot encounters: silence, strange disturbances, fear, and missing minutes, hours, or even days, lead some researchers to believe these events may be parts of the same chain. It is possible that unknown natural forces operate in the most remote corners of the planet. Yeti, if it exists, may not only be a rare primate, but part of this mysterious picture as a guardian of the wild, capable of slipping from human sight as if into another dimension.
Each new story is not simply a reason for skepticism, but an invitation to further exploration. These accounts remind us that the world may be more complex than we are used to thinking.
So, what do you think, guys? Have you or someone you know experienced something similar? Drop it in the comments. We read every story. See you in the next video.
Mm-hmm.